Good morning, everyone. 10:30 in the morning is super early for the music business, but you made it. And we have a very exciting topic to discuss today, which is artists as a startup. Very excited also because it's the first panel sponsored by Berklee College of Music and the campus that we have in Valencia, Spain. And we have here in this panel some of my favorite people that have come to the campus and also discuss this topic, which is probably a good way to start the program of the BIME conference. And I would like to thank the organizer for having us today. Let's start by getting to know each other, and maybe we can start with Cindy.
Oh, okay.
As we are gentlemen. So, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Well, it's hard to say anything at 10:30 in the morning, but I'm Cindy from Gig and Tech Music, Madrid, I guess. And I'm basically a manager, booker, and everything but a record label. Mm-hmm. Because, well, in Spain, as you know, the industry works in a different way. So we don't have like separate things, and we are all together. Mm-hmm. Unless you want to know something else.
We'll keep that for later.
Okay.
So, hello, my name is Tommy Darker. I'm a musician, live in London at the moment. I don't know where I'm going to be in a couple of months. And except for being a musician, I'm also lecturing at the Artist as a Startup course in Berklee, Valencia. And also, I'm building my own startup for a global community of music pros around the world. We're based in London, and it's called Darker Music Talks. That's it in a nutshell. And I'm an ex-military, and I'm growing my beard every day and trying to keep it fit.
Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you, Emilien, for having us. My name is Paul Son Campbell. I spent about 13 years at the major record labels, EMI and Parlophone and Warner. And I have left as of April this year to start a very baby management company in Sweden, looking for Scandinavian artists that will have an international appeal. And we also have a very, very small record label powered by a music blog.
Thanks for having me. My name is Benji. I'm a founder and CEO of a company called Pledge Music, direct-to-fan platform. And I'm on the board of the Future Music Coalition, which I'm extremely proud and honored to be. And I teach an online course for Berklee called Digital Trends and Strategies. And I'm a recovering musician. I do own a record label, a little bit of one, but I don't use it. So, yeah.
It's always good to be the owner of a record label.
It's a little bit one, just like that much, but it doesn't do much anymore.
Thank you guys for being here. My name is Emilien. I'm in charge of the music business program on the Berklee Valencia campus and the master in global entertainment and music business. Before we start, I would like to know who we have in the room, so we can actually tailor the question towards the answer that you're looking for. Do we have any musicians and artists? Okay, that's a good number. Wow, exciting. Do we have people from the industry? People from record labels?
There are no. Wow, there's one there.
We got one.
Publishing? Yeah. From the live sector? Yes. Entrepreneurs? Cool. We have a good mix of people, perfect for this conversation. I'm very excited about this topic of artists as a startup, because part of the philosophy that we're trying to share and to impulse in our students is that there's actually a lot of similarities between the process, the artistic process from an artist to develop his craft, and the one of an entrepreneur to develop a startup. And we actually think that artist, musician makes good entrepreneurs because they naturally develop those skills to be imaginative, to be creative, and develop something that makes sense for their environment and their market. And on the opposite, I also believe that any entrepreneurs or business people who want to develop something, there's a lot of things that you can learn by looking at how artists, musicians are working, are developing stuff. And so those two words between the artistic world and the one of entrepreneurs have actually a lot of synergies and a lot of things we can learn from each other. To start this conversation, I mean, that has been going on for quite some years. It's been the concept of DIY was really big a few years ago, and it's kind of vanishing right now. I always have the conversation with some artists in terms of how much should they take care of business. And I know that sometimes the word business is perceived as a dirty word by artists, and they say, no, I don't want to get my hands dirty thinking about how I should make money, how I should market myself. I want to focus on my craft. So I know that the answer is probably to find the right balance, but what's your perception in that? I mean, you come from different angles of the industry. How do you think, to what extent do you think musicians should be involved on the business side, on the dark side?
Well, I'll speak from the perspective of, when I was playing music full time, I didn't want to get my hands dirty in the business. I wanted to go off and be, driven around and have someone carry my shit on stage and off stage for me and tune my guitars. That's what I really wanted. I ended up getting my hands dirty bartending most nights to pay for the lack of that and to sustain myself. So a lot of artists don't quite get that. There's a proving yourself process, and it's a beginning. And the startup analogy is you wouldn't move into an office with for 400 people when there's 3 of you and you've got a startup balance of $20,000. And I think that artists can be great entrepreneurial business people, and they tend to do so when they're being slapped down by their desires, if you will. I remember wanting to get a record deal, and to me that was the apex at a certain point. If Universal would just sign me, everything was going to be okay. When Universal didn't sign me, I had to find ways to try and make myself signable. So for me that was hacking MySpace, because I knew that they were watching MySpace play counts. So I would add 1 million plays a week to my MySpace account. And all of a sudden I was like, hey, we saw your MySpace page. And it was like, so the musician as hacker and entrepreneur was, that's what got me in the door and got me my first meetings towards not getting signed. So getting your hands dirty in the business side of what you do is not a bad thing. You can't, there's no knowledge that would be useless to a musician. They need to learn it. You do need to go and get your job done as a musician and artist as well, but I would rather spend time making the business side right than bartending to cover my bills. And that's what a lot of artists do, is they'll be, the one exception would be if I were doing it now, I would drive Uber rather than bartend, because I think you can basically make your own schedule and shuttle yourself between shows while making money to do so.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's we need to bear in mind it can be very genre related. I think the internet musicians, the electronic producers who are making music in their bedroom are naturally looking at things on the internet. They're creating assets, they're creating digital art, they're doing that as part of their music creation anyway. If you've got a more organic band that need to book a live room and a rehearsal room and go and rehearse twice a week, it's a lot more difficult for them. So we look after a number of bands and artists, and the electronic guys are naturally disposed to creating electronic assets, whereas some of the bands, they have to be in rehearsal studios, and that's just the nature of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't agree with you guys.
That's good.
No, I think artists must have the knowledge of what the business music industry is and how things work. Like, it's good they know what a publishing company is and what it does for them, or what a manager is, or what are the percentages, or how everything works. So at the end and in the future, this will make them or take better decisions in their career. But one thing is to have the knowledge of how the industry works, and another thing is to actually become a businessman or a business person. I think artists by nature are entrepreneurs for sure, but actually by nature and because of the environment. There's no big companies that are hiring musicians every day. So when you grow as a musician, you don't think like, oh yeah, when I finish my career as a musician, I'm gonna work in this big multinational that will pay me 3,000 euros a month to do music every day of my life. So since this doesn't happen, and since they have to make themselves notice in the world, what it means is that at the end you end up developing some entrepreneur skills. But when these entrepreneur skills start to actually eat your brain, and when you start to spend all of your day thinking about what will the strategy be to develop my career, how many posts I have to do on Facebook, how many posts I have to do on Instagram, how many blah, 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 then you lose the most important thing, which is, sorry for the language, playing in a shitty garage with a shitty guitar, shitty songs that will actually in 10 years take you somewhere. And that actually is the best way to, in the future, have a good business in your hands, because at the end we're talking about music. So it's good, for example, what you say that I used to bartend to pay my bills and play music. Of course, that's the first step, because it's your passion, so you're going to do anything you can to just keep on doing music. But there's a point where this gets serious, and if the artist loses time in its creativity in order to just spend it in business, then you are destroying your own business, if this makes sense.
Isn't that when we think, oh, music automatically means 2 guitarists and a drum kit? Think about the role of DJs and producers. Think about the magician, for example.
Yeah.
How entrepreneurial he was when breaking by creating all those mixtapes, by using SoundCloud to his advantage. Nobody was doing that for him. That was his doing.
And where is he what is he doing now?
He's signed to Warner Music and making probably quite a lot of money.
But that's 1 in a million case, I guess. How many you know like that?
So let's just, to break it down here, I didn't mean that an artist shouldn't have a team around them when the time is right.
Of course.
But the key is, if you know the basics and the skills, you can lead a team better. And
That's
so,
true.
you know, there's often one person, normally not the drummer, who can handle a lot of this stuff, you know. It's always bass drummer or bass player in my life, so, you know, you both can, you know, apologies. No, I don't apologize, I don't care. And so what was interesting was I've worked with and been around artists at the highest levels and at the lowest, and even at the highest levels, they get that way. It's not accidental. There's no oops, I just suddenly found myself being really famous and good. There is always a little bit of an entrepreneurial drive or a spark. And you know, one of the things that I find fascinating is a whole bunch of artists get into this business and they're following what everybody else does. And I see just army of them marching off the same cliff and dropping down like they're chasing a brand play. That's the big one. We need to get brand money now. We need to get this. Music was always a reaction to how things were normally done. And so what I think is you know, you could look at punk rock as a reaction. EDM in particular, now with a laptop and everyone else's music, I can create something brand new out of it. And we're going to talk about millions and millions of tracks. I don't believe that you'll stand a chance of just being able to be a pure make musician and put it out there and it will find its audience. I just don't think that's going to happen. Because you have to have a basic grasp of the tools and concepts of virality or whatever is in order to do it. And then you can find people to build your team around you. The art has to be spectacular as well, but at the same time, art spectacularly made on your own in a basement without any thought to kind of how it's going to be, it stands a lot less of a chance than I think it does if you just apply your kind of hacker brain to it. Maybe it's not entrepreneur, maybe it's hackers.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like you got to hack the system.
But your conversation right now is really helpful to make a difference between what, for me, the difference between DIY, which sometimes is perceived as I do things by myself and it's really close to being an amateur, and what we're talking about, which is having, as an artist, an entrepreneurial spirit, which doesn't mean that you need to do everything by yourself, is to find the best possible asset in your entourage, in your ecosystem, to make it work. So maybe you need a label, maybe you need a manager, but if there's some stuff that you're really good at, you know, because you know your market and you know who your fans are, you can play with those different tools to develop your career in a professional way. So that's really how I make a difference between DIY and being an entrepreneur. As an artist.
DIY is schlepping instruments around in your tiny car. But I think being entrepreneurial is picking the right people for your team. Much like the label services model, rather than being fed into a big machine, you get to, yeah, exactly. You get to pick and choose. I want this publicist to do this for me. So you are entrepreneurial, as in you understand yourself as a business, or your product, your artistry as a business. But it's not necessarily hiring a camper van and sticking your backline in it and driving show to show and being your own sound tech and doing everything yourself.
Quite often that's a bad business move.
Absolutely.
Tommy, I know you want to jump in. You're working with a lot of artists, and sometimes in the role of a mentor, sometimes in the role of a coach in the ways they can develop their career. What's your perspective on that?
First of all, I would like to make a comment on everything that's been said so far. I think the problem with do-it-yourself is that it suddenly started becoming a do-it-all-yourself. So the artist was actually doing things that they were not really good at. And I know that for myself. I've been trying to do graphic design, I've been trying to do development on the website. Some things I love, some things I don't love so much. The things that I really love, I took time to learn how to do it myself, and I'm better now. But the things that I don't really love, I found professionals and delegated the work for them. So I think this is the problem. Once the musician is trying to do everything by themselves, practically speaking, you're not going to be that good at everything. And it looks quite, not so professional, let's say. So this is my first comment. And then, especially with being an entrepreneurial, I think it came out of necessity. We now see that we create revenue, musicians create revenue, they create value for people's lives. And when you have value and you have an audience, and they are ready to give something in exchange, when we're talking about a business, it's a triangle of value, audience, and revenue. And once you have that, then it's all about creating a system to funnel all this value to the right people in the right way. And then you build a business by definition. I know it's not sexy for musicians to think that we're building a business, but if we're creating value and there is people ready to receive the value and pay for this, then this is a business. So by definition. So back to the question, in terms of mentorship, so I'm primarily a musician, so I didn't do this so I can mentor other people. There was a lot of question, and I'm trying to balance my time, and if I can help somebody, I know I don't know the answers. I'm not an accomplished musician, I'm not an accomplished mentor, I'm nothing accomplished. But if there is a level 3 and I can give them something to the people at level 2, let's say, then I'll do that. I think it's very important to have a mentor, a person that you can trust in your life. So when you're in a dilemma, should I go for my art, should I go for my business? At least there is a person to see the third perspective, to declutter your thoughts and see things more clearly, probably. So mentorship, in my opinion, is something strong. There is a connection with a person, you trust them, probably you feel that like they're your parents, and this way you create a strong bond, and there is a person you can trust. And nowadays, I think it's quite difficult. There are so many experts, so many people that know things, and to have a personal relationship with a person you can trust is the most difficult thing.
Tommy, is it worth saying that in the context of the panel that the reason, most artists wouldn't think to themselves, I need a mentor or I need, an advisor, if you will. In the startup world, that's really common, that you would have a mentor and you would have advisors who are objectively looking outside. They're not judging the quality of your work, they're judging the quality of execution quite often. Yeah. So it's like, the equivalent would be great songs, but they sound like shit. So you should probably get someone who's really good at that to, so Glyn Johns will give you a certain type of sound, and that's an analogy to think about is like, artists making something on their own and kind of hiding away, cave person style is gonna live in their own brain, and you bring in a producer, you bring in an engineer, you bring in a mastering engineer, remixer, that type of thing. So just to clarify the analogy there, I think.
In the business world, for somebody creating a company, it's very common to have somebody who acts as a source of finance, an investor, and a different person who's actually mentoring. Whereas in the music industry, oftentimes those two entities have been the same. In the example of a record deal, you get somebody who advises you artistically, who's also the one putting the money on the table, which
And thank God that's changing,
Yeah.
because it's so I have this thought, and it's really strong with me. It is going to seem absurd in the next 5 years that you would create something, manufacture it, and then sell it. It's going to be an absolute absurdity. And the crowdfunding models and direct fan models are proving this out day in, day out. And the music industry is so slow to figure this out. I cannot handle it. It is remarkable. 2 years ago, a study was published that said fans want to spend up to $2.6 billion a year in buying the experience of the making of something over the finished product.
That was Next Big Sound?
There was actually a Nielsen study that we did called Buying the Beats. So this idea that the artist goes away, makes something in secret, and then it emerges and everyone suddenly wants to buy it on a Friday, like we all chose the Friday to release all albums at the same time. Again, just the absolute opposite of how music is consumed. And so I think that to speak to the sort of the funding mechanisms, most hardware startups now are going to use crowdfunding, and they're going to sell the concept, and then they're going to deliver the product. Mm-hmm. And musicians basically go away and make the product and then deliver it in ways that fans don't even want. Mm-hmm. So it's this odd thing that the music community is yet to embrace. Record labels put bands in the studio, hide the most exciting, interesting parts of creation, show up and wonder why people aren't buying and spending the money. So there's going to be a massive disruption in the way in which these art and products are created. And the musicians have actually driven a lot of this, and the industry is years behind, kind of going, no, but you know, we make it and then we put it out on Friday, because that's when people want to buy music, is on Friday. And so it's a really odd concept, yeah. And just it's worth saying that startups today will often use crowdfunding platforms in order to seed the market, because the market of purchasers are there. They will prove concept on songs using these marketplaces rather than spend a whole bunch of money promoting the song and pushing it. So it's an interesting way to look at the dynamic and how it's changing.
I think that model is completely accurate, and I think the record business has been doing it reverse. I think they create an audience first and then sell them the making of. So bootlegs and demos come after they've created an audience. I think it's really important for buying an experience, but we also need to remember that we've probably moved into a consumption model rather than a transactional model. So with the idea of hardware startups, they entice you into an idea and you commit your money, and then hopefully something gets shipped to you in whenever. I think with streaming models and the way people are consuming music, they're not making, there's not that barrier. There isn't that, okay, I've got enough money for one record a week. So on Friday I'm going to go to the record store, I'm going to speak to the clerk, and I'm going to pick the record that matches what I want. I think they can pick and choose and taste from everything now with their one subscription or their internet connection. I think what we need to do is, this is why being part of talking to your audience along the whole way. This is when the artists become entrepreneurs, when they're using Facebook and when they're using Instagram. And it needs to, if you look at some of the really successful artists on social media, look at Licky Lee, it's very clear that her record label are controlling Facebook, but she is absolutely 100% controlling her Instagram channel. And they maybe then post it a couple of days later, but that's her art. And in a way, it's her art, but it's also her entrepreneurial spirit. She knows that she needs to create a constant connection with the audience.
Yeah, you guys are touching on something very fundamental in entrepreneurship, which is to keep your audience in mind, whatever you do in the whole process. And we all know many examples of companies or startups that have developed a new product. They launch it on the market after spending tons of money in R&D and development, and at the end it doesn't work because there's not really a need for that.
If you compare startups and the music business, the music business was built on this waterfall approach.
Yeah.
Silence, as Benji said, and then nothing, 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 here's the product.
Yeah.
And all of that time was wasted talking to the audience, and now it's much more about this continual relationship. It's also to do with the way things were advertised. You used to create a message and broadcast it. That was it. You craft your message and it's one story, and then you broadcast it to as many people as possible. Now that doesn't work. You need to create a constant conversation with millions of different points.
But that's something that artists can feel a little bit awkward about, is when you create something in the process of creating music, do you think about your audience when you do that? And do you craft something according to your audience, or do you try to stay consistent with your art? Because it's kind of a difficult balance to have.
So, is this working? Yeah. So, I'm really surprised because I'm a manager. I should really be thinking about money here. And we're talking about, yeah, if you go on Instagram, Facebook, if you control your social media, if you start as a business person and take care of how to get money and record labels and releasing music on Friday and everything, okay, which is okay, but as an entrepreneur, the first thing that an artist has to take care is about music. And we're not talking about music, we're just talking about everything that surrounds them as a startup, while the most important asset they have is their music. So, I mean, like you were saying that if you have the right, I forgot the word, the right team around you, which I totally agree. Okay, I think an artist must at some point have the right team, and they also must have a person they trust, because that's basically everything they're going to have in the industry, a person that they can trust to fight against all the possible bad things that can happen to them. I agree with that, but then what is it that connects with, you're saying that if I'm an artist and I do my Instagram perfect, my Facebook perfect, I release music when it has to be released, I have the best team in the world, and I have absolutely everything, I'm gonna connect with people? Is that what's gonna connect with people, or it's the music what's gonna connect with the people?
So it's...
I don't know if I'm explaining because my English is not perfect.
I think I understand.
Yeah.
The way to look at it is this. There's what, 80, 90,000, there's I think like something like 250,000 albums released a year, or some crazy amount. And we've got 40 million songs, and we're going to create 70 million in the next 10 to 15 years. Yeah. So it's just noise. And it's tons and tons of noise. And what I find fascinating is that there's this, you know, there's always a unique thing that happens when an artist creates something amazing, you know, and it happens. Artists that I'm into are incredibly niche, and they become harder and harder for me to track if they don't do a lot of this stuff right. I still love their art, I just don't know it exists. There's no central channel, and to your point, it used to be that you could basically, it would be pummeled. A label would buy the high street and they would broadcast it. Now the artist's voice, you know, the beauty of the internet, the beauty of the way in which you can interact is you can create something and instantly seed it to your fans. Instantly. Unadulterated, just pure. And so the more layers that get in the way, the worse it becomes. But as far as, you know, the analogy with a startup, there's, you know, you can look at product market fit, right? Does it fit into the market? My contention, though, is that because we're moving to a consumption-based model, the artist's voice is going to be lost quite often in the fact that it's just awash with thousands and thousands and thousands of new releases. An artist came to me the other day and she's like, I've made this, and I heard her music and it was fucking phenomenal, right? I was losing my mind. I was like, wow, incredible. Haven't been that blown away in a long time. And I said, so what's your plan? She said, I'm gonna put it up on SoundCloud. I said, great, and then what? She said, I guess I'll go for some blogs. Okay. So, you know, you need a team around you. You need, you know, this is where it begins. She got 100,000 plays on SoundCloud, but she didn't have any thought or concept to monetizing it. So now she's got another song with another 100,000 plays, but it's not growing because she hasn't got any catalyst to make it move forward. The art's covered. Now she's got to think, and she's smart, so she's savvy. She just needs, but she hasn't got, you know, she's got one advisor who maybe needs a little help. She's got, you know, I've been trying to help her. But she's very much like, no, I've got an idea of how I'm going to do this. And part of me is like, go, hack hack away, go get it. The other part of me says, I'm unable to spend money on your product, even if I wanted to. I'm a super fan of your work. You as a business person have chosen not to allow me to commit commerce with you. Is it my fault I can't spend money on you? Is it your fault you're not receiving money from me? Yes. It's not my fault. And so I think that there's these two economies, right? 17% of all music consumers identify as superfans. They are 61% of all music revenue comes from this 17%. And if you as an artist offer them streaming, you're making a poor decision. Because if you offer them something else and streaming, you're making a smart decision. They can do two things. So I think ultimately, where this artist has come, she's got the art part right, but she's not big enough yet to have a team, because 100,000 SoundCloud pays out how much, Cliff? 0, thank you, yeah. So she's making 0 money from this, and then she's now number 5 on a streaming chart on Spotify, so she's making $100. So there's a certain business logic that has to be ingrained in artists, and I'm glad that they start to think entrepreneurially, because entrepreneurs tend to break rules, and artists should do that as well. So she followed what every other artist does. Put my music on SoundCloud, get it on Spotify. But she didn't have the end goal of something beyond that, which is, it can be fixed, but then you've got your momentum drag. All of a sudden, your SoundCloud plays are going down per release.
And why?
Sorry.
I mean, sorry. Yeah, so I agree with this, but I agree with this at a point where the artist is already kind of known. Let's say you said to me, this girl went on SoundCloud and she suddenly had 100,000 views. Or, sorry, listens. Yeah. And so once this happens, which is basically happening because music is connecting with people, okay, why does she really have to worry about, oh, my SoundCloud listens are going down, oh, my SoundClouds are going up? In fact, I mean, during all years I've been manager, I've heard absolutely all kinds of theories of why a song should be like this, or why an artist should be here, or we don't have any singles in this album, it's not worth it. And then that album going from 1,000 to 500,000 record sales. The point being that she didn't set up the SoundCloud so that she could data capture, get email addresses, recontact people, and figure out that 17% of them who maybe want vinyl or to come to a show. So there was a basic building block that, because she was just going out for, everyone else put some music on and said, I'm gonna do that too. There was no business logic behind it. So that's why we are here, to enhance this kind of things and to finesse their work. True. So we can like take it further away. But we are here so they can actually concentrate on their skills, which are making music.
I'm with you, but what I'm saying is someone like Ryan Lewis and Macklemore.
I know, sorry, sometimes I sound like...
No, it's fine, but what like Ryan Lewis and Macklemore would do is they would then go, and they would basically, they built, so they took the same principle that she did, except they had a powerful driver behind it, and they were driving it. And then they brought in a manager who was exceptionally skilled, but the manager was executing their strategy, not his own. And he said, the artist drives this. Group love is the other one. The artist drives the philosophy. I'm the manager trying to play catch up with these people.
The decisions of the artist.
What you're saying is not that an artist should be the business, and I think we all agree on that. But through years, and when you look at the history of the music industry, the gatekeepers, which were the record label for a long time, have always, in a way, try to say, look, we are taking care of business. This is not you to take care, focus on your craft and on your music. And they created something that is a big relation of dependency, where artists can actually, in some cases, don't think for themselves and have a strategy. You know, I mean, when you're only in the studio and you don't have a strategy, that's where you cannot see the type of opportunities that Benji is talking about.
But it's nuanced. It's some artists, and I'm not trying to talk myself out of a job. I'm a manager too. I look after some bands that want to be extremely involved, and they understand that it's a profit share, so they want to create all of their own artwork themselves. They understand how that works. And I have another act. He wants to sit in a library and read poetry because he wants to craft songs. It's nuanced, and we are there to, as managers, we are kind of acting as seed investors. You find something you fall in love with, and time, and you invest your own money as a manager in the beginning, and you have to really, really believe in them, but it has to be done as a team. It's not, and the more they know, the better it will be.
Absolutely agree. But I think for you as a manager, you have all interest for your artists to feel empowered and trust their own decision. The problem is that most of the time the artists are like, I don't know the business side, so they are a little bit shy about making those kind of decisions.
And I think we shouldn't be judging them all with the same brush. Some are excellent business people. Who mentioned about delegating things? I think I hate to do gardening, so I get a gardener. It's not that I don't know how to cut the grass, but I don't want to. I want to do something else. I think of that time I would spend 2 hours cutting the grass, I could be doing something that might be beneficial in another way. So rather than my artists go to label meetings, why don't I go to the label meetings? And then he's in the library reading Kafka.
I think there was a point made at some point, Benji and Cindy, which in my opinion, as an artist, it's the key for moving forward. And it's not about focusing on the mass market. Okay, it's great numbers, billions, super fans, amazing. These people don't know about the artists we're looking for, about us when we're creating music. They don't know. So they're just numbers. For me, they're just silly numbers. If I know that there is so many people out there, that doesn't tell me anything. What tells me something is the people that connect with me. And I would like to ask you a question. Please raise hands. Who knows the Lean Startup? Who is familiar with a Lean Startup?
Oh, Lean Startup.
Okay.
Yep.
So Benji, you mentioned that, we are testing what's working, and this is the Lean Startup. We've seen all these platforms, not just crowdfunding, but like Patreon, which is crowdfunding every month for every creation you make.
Subscription,
My research is funded by Patreon. So there is people that say, hey, I love your research, I know you're going to give it away for free anyway, but I'll give you $1 per creation. That's really nice. And this way, by having, for example, people that support you and they believe in you and they put the money in you, then you will have a dialogue. And for me, this is the most valuable thing. All these millions of people, all these billions of superfans, and all these trillions of dollars tell me nothing, because they have nothing to do with me. What has to do with me as an artist is actually the connections that I have with the people. And it might be 100 people in the beginning, but if these 100 people believe in me, knowing that I will have them for the years to come, and they will see all of my journey, this is my product. And I start believing, and I'm not sure, but I start believing that we're not just making music anymore, we're not just musicians, we are delivering an experience, an experience of a lifetime. So personally, I would not like to follow a band that will disappear after a few months, and most bands do. That's why I don't commit. But if I see a band actually releasing stuff and creating content and showing how they feel and how the creative process goes, just like I'm doing, then I will commit with them, and I will stay with them, and I will put my money in them. And there is people where I don't read their updates on Patreon, for example, but I do give them $25 per month just because I want them to create, and this is empowerment. For me, these are the numbers that count, not the
and that's
the
exactly what I
billions.
meant. The 17% of the superfans, that's you. You're one of them. And what artists have it's a fundamental to this industry moving forward. The artists that do not service those superfans, those 17% are not going to have as good, I would argue they're not going to have much of a shot at all. Because if you're trying to chase the other 87% who just don't care and will go anywhere and are just, that's a different market, and it's a very hard market to monetize.
I think we're just going back to Kevin Kelly, 1,000 true fans. I think if you have 1,000 people, that probably will take a lifetime to build 1,000 people that believe in you so much they will not give up. But if you have these 1,000 people, I think this is it's an army.
It's more the question
of
army. If you don't have those 1,000 people and you can't get them, what are you doing wrong? It's like I've got this great idea for an app, but no one uses it or likes it. Okay. But if there's 1,000 people using it, but they use it every day, okay, well, there's something to build on there. And that's the smaller metric. I get asked all the time, I want to run a campaign on your site. How do I do that? And I'm like, well, who are the first 20 people in your show every day? The ones that are trying to bat down the door. Start there. Those are your 20. That's your beachhead, and now you go conquer the rest of them one by one, because what they tell their friends is going to be relevant. Startups were trying to hack this with the long waiting list to get onto the app. I fell victim to that one with Mailbox when it was coming out. Just the intro video had me sold. I would have bought it if I could have. There was no money to be overpaid. So there's a fundamental that artists have to understand, that there is a certain level of fan that they have to service. It is now required. It's not optional. The first people that a DJ sends their mixes to is key. Chemical Brothers were doing this with test pressings. They would go to the clubs and they would drop off their electronic weapons, they called them, I think, which was the only mix of that song in that way was on that piece of plastic. The DJ was like, thank you, so again, they're hacking the audience as artists creating and entrepreneurs at the same time.
But we're talking about experience, we're talking about the super fans, but I also want this discussion to lead to solution for any emerging artist that's looking about how do I start in this ecosystem. The industry was used to one model that worked for everybody, and either you liked it or not. And I think the big change that happened in the last 10, 15 years is that we went from a mono model industry to an industry that actually doesn't have rules. And you have a counter example for anything. There's some strategies that work for an artist that will not be applicable for anybody else. So that can be quite overwhelming or quite confusing for an artist that say, okay, how do I use those great tools of direct-to-fan platforms, crowdfunding, social media, when I need to start my career and I still need to focus on studio time?
I think we also need to assess the definition of success. And I think as Benji said about an app that nobody uses, there's one very, very, very key point. Not everybody deserves to make a living from making and playing music. That's just the nature of the beast. I would have liked to play football, but I'm not very good, so I don't get paid for it. There is a million marketing strategies as how do we cut through the noise in an attention economy. But not everybody deserves, just because you can put something on SoundCloud does not mean you deserve to make a living from making music.
But
that's the consequence of all these new technologies we're talking about. Now music is like a democracy. Everyone thinks that because they have a garage band in their computer, they can make music. So this
they can.
Yeah. Well, no, they can make sounds. Okay, but a different thing is to really make music and to have that talent that sometimes you're either born with it or you're not born with it. And there's nothing that can explain how this happens. Going back to a little bit to the thing we were talking about, it's not that I'm against you all the time, okay? No, but for example, my experience is that I don't know with how many artists I've worked in the last almost 20 years, but I've never ever had all the artists that I've tried to invest money in, make everything perfect, have all their SoundCloud things, marketing, PR, whatever you want to think about. At the end, no matter how things are well done and how much money I spend in them, that they have they don't really work. Even if they're good, okay? Technically good, because obviously you can like the music or not, and my most successful artists have just come out of the blue, and suddenly they posted one song in one Facebook with 5 fans, and then 3 months later that Facebook had 200,000 fans.
Yep.
And there's something that none of us can really tell to the artist, like, this is done like this, like this, like this. There's something that just somehow happens. So this is why I think that the most important thing for them as a startup is to work in their skills.
What you're talking about is greatness.
Yes.
Right? So what was, there was, I watched, I don't get out much anymore, right? So I watched a guy do a presentation on SEO, and search engine optimization. And he did this 12-point thing of this is how you make your website have perfect search engine. So Google will pick up every change you make and you'll always rank every story first. And he said, but this is the golden rule. You can disobey every single one of those if you make a great fucking video with cats in it. right? So what's funny is you got the I'm swearing early in the morning. I apologize. That's what you get.
Somebody tweet that, please.
Yeah.
Somebody tweet that.
But so what's interesting is you're right. Certain artists show up. They're just ready to go, and they are useless as humans. They can't put their pants on, but they are just like born talented. And so what they do shows up. The video of the guy playing organ in church goes viral because you watch it, and it's inhuman. And a fundamental about if you were to go in and start to create products in the way that they used to be created on a massive assembly line with no flexibility or whatever it was, you just wouldn't be competitive in today's marketplace. It doesn't add up. So there is a certain amount of the business logic that just has to fall into place, right? But what I'll point out is that the music industry has been slow to evolve, and I'm being optimistic by saying slow. And the industry has halved in size in the last 15 years in terms of the money it's making. While consumption has gone up 100-fold, everyone's making less money, right? It was $38 billion down to $16 billion in 15 years. So it's gone horribly wrong. So we can't sit there and say this is how it was and you can't start from there. It's not the logical place to start. If what you're doing is catastrophically failing, you can't just go, let's do more of it. If releases put out all on the same day are all competing with each other, shouldn't we look at that rather than say, but no, we can captivate all that attention in one place? But that's not how the internet works. It works whenever you get onto it. It's as fast as you can push to your phone. So the tools are usable. When I was a touring musician, I didn't have internet in my car all the time. The wasting of time doing, waiting, finding a Wi-Fi spot, so I'm not going to go backwards and say I wish it was like that. We have the tools are available to us, and the artists that use them tend to take that kernel of greatness and exponentially grow it. If they know just the basic paths before they get a manager. Ideally speaking, a manager comes in and says, I got to help manage this craziness. That's a good thing, rather than I've got a couple of great songs, I've got no money, I'm not interested in being on the internet, I don't like Facebook, I don't like Twitter, and I'll make nothing but racist or sexist comments if you put me on those platforms. You got a challenge right there. Or a niche market waiting to emerge.
Yes, I would like to leave also some time for people in the audience to ask questions, so we're going to try to wrap up.
Okay. Do you have 2 minutes for... I would just like to say, just to go back to the initial concept of this panel about building actually a business as a musician. I like going back to the fundamental concepts of having value, having revenue streams, and having the audience. So for me, if I'm an artist, and what I'm telling you is not something that I read in a book. It's something that I did personally, and I don't know if I did it successfully. Some people have done it more successfully, but initially. You start by starting and by having one person that likes your music, and they start committing, and then you have a second person, and then a third person, and then all these people, this potential pool of people that have faces and they have names and a mom and and friends and stuff. So for me, they're not just numbers. It's about identifying these people, that they are human beings, and connecting with them. And this is how everything starts. I know that it's a slow process, and by the time somebody has actually reached 1,000 people that care about what they do and they pay for it, maybe the industry has changed. But this is not a problem, because these are just the tools for me. For me, the tools enable you to do something. But if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know what the goal is, what your business is about, and what you're planning to do as a human being and what you're creating, then the tools are useless. For me, okay, great that we have Spotify. Again, it's a company. It might fail. Something else might come over. Then another tool. But these are companies and enablers. They're not building your business. The business is done between human beings. And we're going back to the old village mentality. Let's connect with human beings instead of numbers. That's my takeaway, and that's how I'm trying to do things. I know I could have made more money. I could have more fame, or I could be more important with my ego. But I know that at least the people I'm connected with right now, with everything that I do, they're 100 people, but at least they give a shit, and I know them personally. I've created pins with their faces, and if I don't call them once a month, I call them once a month, and I see the face and I put it on the other bucket, the people that I've actually talked with. And this is a way that I can engage with these people, and if I cannot have more capacity. It's taken out of hacker, daily hacker, whatever. But yeah, if I cannot connect with these people, then I cannot expand. And then once you see that you have too many people that care, then maybe you get a brilliant manager. So this is how I would suggest that an artist would start today, but don't take my word for granted. That's my opinion.
To close.
Connect with that people, what do you do? Music.
You make music.
So you
Yes.
take care of your music.
It starts with great
Startup.
music, and then you have a team that engineer opportunity for you and reach an audience. So engineering opportunity. So for instance, everyone should look at 3 o'clock on Stereo Gum for our Canvas's latest single today. Engineering opportunity.
But you guys, I mean, you don't disagree on the essence of it, which is talent is still the most important ingredient.
Yes.
But being business savvy and understanding your opportunity is a catalyst. The problem is that for the most talented artists, they don't need to understand business because they will make it regardless, because they will find the right people. But there's a lot of artists who, between understanding the business and not, is going to be, you can think it's a sad fact, but it's going to make a difference between them playing in the garage on the weekend and actually make a career.
But also, the other part to that is look at the artists that will suddenly come into a massive amount of fame and success and completely blow it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a reason that certain artists can take a semi-hit album from the 90s and turn that into an entire industry for themselves and their kids moving forward. And others who will be like, I just got famous, I need an entourage of 40 people around me at all times, and then they're bankrupt. Mm-hmm. So there is a certain amount of like, you know, and that's again, knowing going into it, the simple principle of, I shouldn't sell 100% of my publishing for 50 grand today. Mm-hmm. Because my song's doing quite well. Mm-hmm. Knowing that is a fundamental, you know, and you know, that's why.
I just want to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. Do we have, if we do have questions, otherwise we can keep going.
Well, someone should have a question.
Front row question there.
Yes. Do we have microphones?
Good morning. Thank you for coming out.
Good morning.
Very inspiring speech and panel. The question that I had to ask was, when you're at that point, somebody like you, Tommy, when you're at that point where you have those true fans, your 17%, is the onus on you as an artist to be the one asking for the sale, asking for the purchase? Where do you draw the line? Like if you have your team, is it something that is off to the side? How important is really asking? And where does asking conflict with your art, you know, as an artistic person?
I'm obsessed with this question. It's a brilliant question. Crowdfunding, I met with the CEO of Kickstarter last week, right? He's a friend of mine. And they did $1 billion in the last 18 months in crowdfunding. So the consumer, the fans, are totally okay with this. The artist's squeamishness with this is in the artist's own head, and in the industry's head. Labels would say this to us for years: we would never use your platform. We don't, you know, it's not, we are the ones with the money here. We're the ones that do this. I'm like, but the consumers are saying differently. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. So crowdfunding becomes a $6-7 billion business and is growing at 200% a year. The music industry is catastrophically falling. And shouldn't there be a moment where you go, well, hang on a minute, let's get over ourselves here. And what I would advise is what someone like Ryan Leslie does, who's got an app called Superphone, which is one you want to check out. Ryan Leslie invites communication and merchandises on it. And if you don't want it, you don't have to have it. If you do, you do. But he's not squeamish about it. It's available for here. He's got the Patreon model. He's got all the models involved. He's not squeamish because he's going to make a business for himself, and he's a smart guy. The other thing you can do as an artist is you can ask your fans. And so many artists forget this. They're like, we are going to put our album out on Friday, and everyone can buy it or listen to it here. They don't ever say, we're making an album, how do you want to hear it? Do you prefer FLAC or this? Do you want us to make vinyl? If so, what color? You know, here are 5 designs, what do you think? You know, consumers and creators are very blended, in particular in the electronic dance space where they are there. So you can ask the question, how do you want this music? Don't assume that because you're an artist and because a label performs a function that they know how to deliver your fans that experience. Entrepreneurs like Ryan Leslie and artists like Ryan Leslie are proving this every day. He's making more per fan than he ever made as a recording artist on a label, simply because he asked the questions, how do you want to communicate? They said by text. He said no problem. So he's committing commerce with them.
I'll make a company.
Yeah, and the same thing. My most profitable album I ever made was the one that I made from my own platform, because I walked into the studio and my fans had covered the studio and the musicians, the mixing, the mastering, and the manufacturing. And I was like, why did I go into debt? Why did I sell my rights? I don't understand. It was insanity to me. And yet every day artists go, well, I want to get a record deal, then the record company pays for it, then they'll put it out on a Friday when everyone can buy it. You know, so I'm being, facetious about it, but you do need to realize that social media, email lists, SMS platforms have allowed the artists to just ask. And if the fans don't want to answer, they're the 87% who are just going to cruise around and go wherever, but the 17% will tell you loud and clear what they want. They'll tell you how much they want to pay for it, and then you can deliver it.
If you ask them, I mean, this is, just to give my standpoint on that, my worst part is when I need to ask for something specific, and especially when it comes to the exchange of money. I know I'm building a business, but it's the part that I hate. When it's time for me to send a newsletter, an email or something, just to ask for a specific thing, buy this ticket or something, I'm like, I should have been working somewhere, I don't like doing that. Because I didn't like doing that, I started creating a culture around what I wanted to do. And in this way, I was inviting people to join my experience. I was never asking, hey, buy this. And this is my perspective. So for you as an artist, I would suggest that you find your own way of expressing and asking, and everybody has a different way of asking. Somebody might be like, hey, could you buy this? Or, hey man, just put it out. If you care, just buy, whatever. Just find your way of expressing, these things that, hey, here's something valuable. If you would like to have access to this, this is the price, or what would you be willing to pay for? Or let's start a conversation. Because now if we tell them this is what you need to buy and this is the price, buy it, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. This is the old mindset.
And to add on that, only you have the answer to that question, not your
exactly.
manager,
That's
not
the point.
your label. You're more likely to find the right answer than anybody else because you're the artist.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if we have no more time. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the discussion and you get something useful out of it. I would like to thank also our panelists for this great discussion that could have been running a lot longer, but I really enjoyed having you in the panel, and I wish all of you a great conference.
Thank you.